Hi, everybody. At Skating PJ here with my pal, Ryan Stevens. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, PJ?
I am, except the light is reflecting into my glasses. No, it's okay now. I am thrilled to see. Okay, hold on. Yeah, we are live everywhere. So on your Facebook page, on my Facebook page, on my LinkedIn, and on my YouTube. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we're going to get right into it. We are here specifically today to talk about sort of a love letter to Barbara Ann Scott, your newest book. Let me just show everybody the cover. Barbara Ann Scott, Queen of the Ice. It launches either today or yesterday. Which one is it, Ryan?
Technically today, yeah.
It is so exciting to have you here to talk about it. Did you ever meet Barbara Ann Scott?
I did not have the pleasure, but I felt like I felt like she was an old friend writing this book. That's for sure.
Do you know what? You would have loved her. You would have loved her. And this is where people can order the book, bookstoread.com/Barbara Ann Scott. She was one in a gazillion, not in a million, in a gazillion. Always sort of ladylike seeming with these big, beautiful, bright, wide blue eyes. Loved figure skating until the end. I had the chance to meet her on lots of different occasions. She wouldn't have remembered me from a hot rock, I'm quite sure. But she always made you feel like you mattered, and she always made you feel that she'd known you forever. There's a chapter in my book that's devoted to Barbara Ann Scott, but you have an entire book talking about her. So let's get right to your book. I want you to show me and everybody else. Talk to me a little bit about the process and why Barbara Ann Scott.
Well, I'll start by talking about the process. It was interesting. I was kind of thinking about different things that I'd wanted to write about for a long time. And Vaughn, who's a good friend, who's a big skating collector, gave me these wonderful scrapbooks from the 1940s of newspaper clippings, and what treasures they were. And I said, there's something I can do with these, and that's tell her story. So I kind of took the plunge and decided to put together a book. It was really interesting compared to other books that I'd written, in that in a lot of cases you're struggling to find information. In this case, there was almost too much. Back in her day, she was in the newspaper every single day.
Yep.
So lots of coverage, lots to go through. But I was delighted to have support from Skate Canada on this project. They opened up their archives for me. So I had access to a lot of material I wouldn't have otherwise. And as for why Barbara Ann Scott, I think now more than ever, we really need great Canadian stories. And she hugely popularized figure skating in Canada. She blazed the trail for all of the great Canadian skaters that followed. And she succeeded in winning an Olympic gold medal at a time when the sport was very political and Canada really didn't have any sway, which was quite interesting. And I think her story is just a wonderful reminder of how really hard work and dedication can pay off, but also a reminder that in pursuing our dreams, whatever they might be, we can inspire others to do the same thing. So it really is an incredible Canadian story.
You know what's so wonderful about it? When you think about it, Canadian champion, North American champion, European champion. I think the only other person to do that was Dick Button.
Correct. Yeah.
And then Olympic champion. And am I missing anything?
No, she won. Yeah, she won Olympics, Worlds, Europeans, North Americans, and Canadians in the same year. Only woman to ever do it.
Yep, quite wonderful. And maybe what people don't know is that there was also a Barbara Ann Scott doll.
Oh yeah, so definitely. That was huge.
She was she was not just a figure skater. She was a brand. And that's one of the things that maybe people don't know, because back in 1948, brand, what does that even mean? So and you and I both have a friend, Barb Strain, who's a legendary researcher in figure skating, and she is convinced that she was named Barbara for Barbara Ann Scott. How many Barbaras are there? Ladies of a certain age, sort of slightly older than I, but nevertheless a ton of Barbaras in Canada, probably for Barbara Ann Scott. So can you talk to me a little bit about the brand Barbara Ann Scott?
Well, for starters, I mean, when you mentioned the Barbara Ann Scott doll, that was really I mean, back in those days, when you had the Eden's Wish Book or the Sears Wish Book, she was really like, that was like the Tickle Me Elmo before, these must-have Christmas gifts were even a thing.
Yeah.
And in terms of her being a brand, she went viral in Canada before most Canadian households even had a television set, let alone the internet. I mean, that was decades in the future. And that was largely due to the fact that most Canadians subscribed to a newspaper. She was in the paper every day. They played newsreels of her skating in the movie theaters before people would watch a movie. And she went on a cross Canada tour and performed not only in big cities, but in these memorial arenas in very small towns. And everybody went to go see her live. So from coast to coast, she became famous because people who had never been to an ice show showed up at their local rink to watch her. So it really was incredible.
You know what was so much fun? So back in my childhood, as a very young girl, Mrs. Scott, Barbara Ann's mother, used to come and watch skating. She'd sit sort of like in the chairs by the rink side, and she'd watch skating. And she was always very nice to the little kids, of which I was one. And she'd have conversations about, oh, you're looking very good out there and that kind of stuff. And we'd all sort of think, who's this nice, kindly, grandmotherly kind of person who is talking to me? And I finally asked her one day, I said, is your daughter, here on the ice, or a question like that, because I couldn't think of why else somebody would be there. And she said that, yes, her daughter had been a skater. I'll never forget my mom telling me afterwards sort of who she was and who the skater was. But it wasn't ever, my daughter was, a rock star, and you're really nothing. It was just, she was just a very kindly sort of grandmotherly lady who used to watch skating all the time. So, and then again, to meet Barbara Ann Scott, it was like meeting, a living legend, truly gracious, a rascal for sure, and known to have some salty language when she was in sort of like the Dome of Silence with her friends.
Yeah.
But certainly somebody about whom we can be super proud. Are there any moments in your research that surprised you?
There's actually one short chapter which shocked me, and it's actually a chapter about how she actually dealt with some stalkers. And stalkers are people that were just generally, problematic
zealous fans
people.
Can we say zealous fans?
We can say zealous fans. In one case, we can actually say stalker.
Okay.
And what's interesting is, I mean, when we think of skaters, that of the more modern era, that have agents, that have people around them to kind of manage them. She didn't have anything like that at all. It was when she turned professional, it was her and her mother.
Yeah.
And they were kind of put forth to the wolves. And I mean, I think 90% of the people that she came in contact with were absolutely lovely, but that 10% or 5% that weren't, quite scary. So just to think that in a different time.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting chapter. I think people are going to be quite surprised by that one.
Well, it is interesting because we didn't think of there was not even probably a word for it at the time. I was sort of being a bit tongue in cheek when I said zealous, but people wouldn't have really thought about stalkers or thought about anything to do with that. Did you find, I mean, she's somebody who had tremendous self-discipline. She's somebody, my mom was a national level judge. And people used to ask her, non-skating people used to ask her, if Barbara Ann skated today, would she still be a champion? When we were thinking of all of the women today and the powerhouse jumpers that there are. And my mom always said, a champion is a champion. It does not matter what era they were born into. If she had been born into today's era, she probably still would have been a champion. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think skaters of every era have done what they've had to do to be the best as compared to everybody else at that time. I think the skates were completely different back then,
Sure.
obviously, and training methods were completely different. I think if Barbara Ann Scott or Sonia Henney or any of those, great early champions had the equipment that skaters have today and the coaching, absolutely they'd be the best of the best because they were competitors through and through, and they would have won no matter what it took to win rather.
Tell me about the giveaway.
All right. So right now there is it's actually the last day for this giveaway. If you go on the Storygraph app, let me find the
.com. No, it's already on the screen below you.
I love it. Okay.
Look at me.
If you go on that app, you can enter to win one of 250 copies of the ebook, and it will be delivered right to you. The giveaway actually ends at midnight tonight.
Yep.
So you'll find out very soon if you win.
That's amazing. And talk to me a little bit about where people can buy this book.
Absolutely. So it's available in ebook. It's available in paperback, hardcover, large print, and audiobook. If you go to the link that you'll see at the bottom of the screen, books2read.com/Barbara Ann Scott, it will show you all of the links for each kind. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes & Noble, through Waterstones in the UK, and through Readings in Australia.
Amazing. Okay, I want to know a little bit more about Barbara Ann's story. I remember when I interviewed her for my book, that she and her husband, Tommy King, they were on telephone extensions. So I called them on their home phone number, and one was upstairs and one was downstairs. It was maybe the cutest thing ever, because, they were just so adorable with each other, and talking about their stories way back when. I can't remember it, and I was looking for my own book to sort of see if I could remember it. But when she wanted her first pair of skates, do you know this story?
Yes. So she had asked for her very own pair of skates, and her parents instead gave her a pair of double runners, which she did not like at all. So she just plumped her bum down on the ice and said, "I'm not skating because I'm not going to wear these skates." And when she finally received, the regular figure skates that she wanted, she was actually quite sickly as a child. So she wasn't able to go out and skate as much as she wanted to. So she'd wear them in bed sometimes, just with them dangling over the side. But she was thrilled to have them.
That's the fun thing about all of this, is that she really was a skater through and through for the ages. Were there any stories that you came across sort of about her training or about her just general life as a skater?
I think that just the discipline that she had, I think because figures are no longer a thing, we don't really think about that as much. But back in her day, they were worth more than free skating. She loved figures, and she was actually much stronger in the figures than she was in free skating. And she was one of the very loud voices at the time when they were getting rid of a figure. She was one of the people that was saying, "No, I want them to stay." So she was a big lover of them, and spoke quite eloquently about why they should still have some sort of a part in the sport.
Well, and lots of people believe, and I do too, I think, that that figures had a huge influence on the control and on the understanding of the glide, understanding of the curve, understanding turns. But you know what? There is no substitute for the amazing athleticism that we're seeing today. Would you have considered back in her day, her style to have been athletic as well?
I think it was athletic for its time. I mean, she was doing, if you think about what other skaters were doing at that time, she was doing a double Lutz, which was most of the women at the time were just doing an axel and a double Salchow. So she was ahead of the time technically. But free skating back in those days was more about putting together a clean program that was very musical, timing your jumps and spins to the music. It wasn't so much about, let's do something harder than everybody else. That's not what the focus was at the time. But she was definitely athletic for her time.
You were a skater. People may not know that. Does your fascination with skating, does it go back to Barbara Ann, or did you discover her a little bit later?
A little bit later. I mean, I skated in the 90s, and I mean, I really fell in love with the sport watching so many other great Canadian skaters on television, Taller Cranston and Underhill and Martini and Brian Orser and Kurt Browning and Liz Manley. So that was those were the skaters that I grew up with watching. But as I became more interested in the sport, she was someone that always stood out to me because you'd read about her and you go, this woman was an absolute legend in her time. But I don't necessarily think that she's someone that gets as much attention, gets the amount of attention today in Canada for her achievements as compared to some of the other skating, legends that we have. Yeah.
I think there's also the case of perhaps, that you have to have sort of, when I say older people, I just mean people who've been around for a long time to be able to really point out these stories, because it's not like it used to be. When I was a kid skating, which is before you, if you were a skater, that's what you were. It's not like you were a skater in the wintertime and then a soccer player in the summer and then, whatever else during the bridge seasons. If you were a skater, you were a skater. And in fact, we've got people who are putting in comments right now who are people that I've known for like decades, because they go back to my childhood, people like Diana Flynn, Joanne Shaw. Hi, everybody. So I think that you need those people to sort of pass those stories forward. And I think that that's what you're doing, is bringing these stories to light in a way that younger skaters may not have been aware. Are there any other things? So talk to me about her life as a professional skater.
So she actually didn't. It's kind of funny. I mean, she turned professional at a time when amateur and professional were two very, very strict things. As an amateur skater, you couldn't make any money. She turned professional and she needed to make money, but she didn't particularly love it. And she didn't skate as a professional for very long. She did her own tour, and then she starred with the Hollywood Ice Review in the United States for a few years. And I think as soon as she was very much proud of the fact that she kind of had old-fashioned values in the sense. She said, I want to get married and I want to stop skating and I want to, do something else. So her professional career didn't last that long. But after she hung up her skates, she really pursued all kinds of interesting things. She was a really accomplished horse rider.
Yeah.
And won many, many trophies and ribbons for doing that. And she also opened her own salon for a while, which the Chicago area, which I thought was pretty cool. The Barbara Ann Scott Salon.
I didn't know that.
You'll read about that in the book as well.
I bet you she could do an amazing updo. You know what I mean? So let's talk about rivalries. Are you aware of any rivalries that were happening at the time that she was skating?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think the press twice, they really tried to make a rivalry between her and the top American skater of the time. Her name was Gretchen Van Zandt Merrill.
Oh, that's a good name.
It is a good name.
Yeah, I like it.
And she was she was the blonde and Barbara Ann was the brunette. So they tried to play them against each other. And then when Barbara Ann turned professional, the press really tried to pit her against Sonia Henney because they were both touring at the same time. And Barbara Ann had actually gone to see Sonia skate when she was quite young and looked up to her greatly and was very angry that the press was trying to invent this rivalry between the two of them, because she really respected her. I think a lot of the rivalries that went on in those days, just as they do today, are narratives that kind of get pushed by the media more than they necessarily are reality.
Well, and, it's interesting with Barbara Ann, because she, as I said, having met her a few times, and some of the skating fans and skating insiders that are on this live stream right now, they will attest to the fact that she could not have been more gracious. She wasn't somebody to sort of like put on a fake smile and then turn around and be sort of nasty or ugly. She was somebody, if somebody asked her for a picture, she was always very, very accommodating and just loved it. So were there any other sort of stories that you could think of that might pique the interest of some of our potential readers out here. And by the way, I just want to remind everybody that is the link where you can go to figure out how you're going to order your book. And I recommend that you do. Everything that Brian writes and does is just of the highest quality. I'm a little bit jealous, but that's okay.
Thank you.
So any other little stories that sort of jumped out at you that you thought were kind of interesting, even if they came from somebody else?
Well, here's a great story that came from somebody else, and it ties in with what you said about her just being so gracious. Debbie Wilkes told me this story when I spoke with her when I was researching this book, and she said they were at, it was a Canadian Championships one year or some sort of other event, and I think it was a gala or something, and someone had wanted to take Barbara Ann's picture. There was a photographer there, and Debbie was there, and Frances Defoe and Liz Manley were there as well. And Barbara Ann said, "No, you're not going to take a picture of me. You're going to take a picture of all of the champions." And she insisted that all of them be in the picture. And it's a beautiful picture. I really thought that was a testament to what kind of a person she was. She wasn't just in it for herself. She really wanted to lift other people up as well and lift up Canadian skating.
There was a moment during a Canadian Figure Skating Championships in Hamilton. I don't know if it was like 100th anniversary, 50th anniversary. I'm not sure, but it was a big deal, big anniversary. Barbara Ann Scott was the guest of honor. And one of the things that they wanted her to do, was it Canadians or was it Skate Canada? Anyway, it was a big competition, Copps Coliseum. Venue was packed, and they
I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
About the open air convertible that they drove.
No, that's not what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the story that she got put in the convertible, like old style parade style. And this convertible was going to drive around the rink and just, so she could do the wave to all of the people. And I mean, the crowd was so excited to see her and all the rest of it. Well, the car went too slowly. So the tires burnt like a hole in the ice. So the car got stuck. So there she is, this darling Canadian figure skating darling. And she's still waving and whatever. And they finally had to send a bunch of guys out to try and push the car out of the little dent that the tire made. Then they had to wait some extra time while they filled the tire with slush, tire mark with slush and water and whatever, and wait for it to freeze. But she's still that smile, that sort of like she just took it all in stride. There are other people whom I've met who, would have just gone completely bananas. But she wasn't like that. She just kind of rolled with the punches in her little convertible. And okay, go, your story.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think another year they put her on a Zamboni.
Oh, might very well have. She's just a good sport all the way. And then a friend of mine was sort of helping to escort her and just if she needed anything. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing the story. She was getting ready to go up the stairs and she had her compact out to sort of check her lipstick. And she said to my friend, "Okay, there are 3 people coming down the stairs who want to speak with me. But after those 3, we're going to have to go upstairs to go do whatever it was that they were going to do." Like she was just always mindful. And again, always gracious, as was her mother, who said I was a good skater. No, she didn't really. She might have, but it wasn't true. But anyway,
She thought it.
So I want to talk one more time about the giveaway. And I want to talk one more time about what is your favorite moment from the book?
I think one of my favorite moments from the book was just really considering the kinds of ice conditions that she dealt with at the time. We're so used to obviously skating indoors in these lovely rinks. The rink where she trained was freezing cold. And when she went to Europe and won all of these competitions, including the Olympics, actually the Olympics in 1948 and the Worlds in 1948, the ice conditions were horrendous. So I think just the fact that she was able to win against all odds is just something that stood out to me. And I just thought it's such a wonderful testament to how good of a skater she was.
Well, and maybe what people don't know is that those venues were outside.
Yes.
So they had to deal with snow coming onto the surface.
Mhm.
The surfaces were all sort of like hand snow pushed and flooded. There wasn't like a driving Zamboni. You also had to contend with if there were sort of like downhill slopes on part of the rink. Now, what I did know is that there were moments of real camaraderie in the dressing room. There were skaters who were letting each other, and Barbara Ann would have been part of this. There were skaters who were letting each other know where those sort of tricky spots were. So if you were skating figures, for instance, you didn't want to start your figure on a part of the rink where there would be a downhill slope as you were trying to come back to your center. That was tricky business. So I love the camaraderie, and as I said, lots of people in my world are people that I've known from childhood, from skating, and you're probably in the same boat. So that sense of camaraderie was really quite wonderful. Do you have any other sense of what it was like to skate? And what about her relationship with Sheldon Galbraith, her coach?
So she just adored him, and he very much adored her too. And I think what made that relationship work so well was the fact that he wasn't that old when he started. He was a very new coach around the time when he started working with her. So she was able to go out there and do her program. He would do the whole program, and she would follow him. And he was able to do everything um, that she did in her program. So that really helped things a lot. But he was always in her corner. Um, I think she'd had, as you'll read about in the book, I think she'd had although she very much respected her coach before that, I think she'd had a pretty hard time. So I think having someone come in with fresh ideas on how to really up the ante with her free skating at the time was very much appreciated. And they both spoke so highly of each other throughout their lives.
They were also a little bit closer in age. So
Yes.
that
Yeah.
might have helped as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we've got just like a couple of minutes left. So if anybody has any comments or any questions, now is the time to do it. But I want to see if you have any other projects up your sleeve. I want you to mention what you've done so far. Can people still find those other books on those other locations that we talked about? Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world.
So in terms of people always say, what book are you going to do next? And I say, you know what, I'd like to promote the one that I have right now before I even start worrying about that. But continuing to do new blogs once a week. On the weekends, I put a new one out every week. And at skateguardblog.com. And I do have 5 other books that you can find online. You can find them on the blog. I have one about the father of figure skating, whose name was Jackson Haynes. I have a book about skating in the 80s. I have a kind of a almanac, like an encyclopedia of Canadian figure skating that you can find as well. So lots of neat little things for for anybody who's a real skating lover.
Where do you find all of your little tidbits? That's what I want to know.
It's a secret.
I'm so impressed.
Do you know what? I read a lot. I love to read about skating, and I also believe that you have to. I think in this day and age, we all want to watch a video of something, and
Yep.
I think that we can learn so much more and go into so much more detail if we actually bother to read. And that's why I love reading about skating. That's why I like writing about skating, and that's how I think we can learn so much more about the sport's history.
I think one of the last things I want you to comment on is social media. Where is it good and where is it bad? And what advice can you give people?
Gosh, I've been at this for over 10 years now. I think that I'm kind of fortunate I think when I first started, I tried to kind of cover skating that was going on now, and I shifted to writing about the sport's history. So I kind of got out of that, sphere where you're, where it can be a little bit controversial, because I find, gosh, when people have strong opinions, and I think that people, especially on sites like Twitter or X now, or
Yep.
Reddit as well. I think that when people can be anonymous, they can say whatever they want to, and they do. But I think that anybody that's covering the sport in any way has a responsibility to try to do it in an intelligent, respectful way. And I think that 99% of the people out there do, and we should be supporting them.
I think so too. Okay. Any final words? We've come to the end of our time. I just want people to know that if they want to watch this in replay, they'll be able to on my YouTube channel, on your Facebook, my Facebook, and on my LinkedIn as well. So make sure you watch it and share it often. Anything else you want to say?
I just want to say thank you so much, PJ, for doing this. It's been lovely to talk about Barbara Ann Scott and the book. And I really want to thank all of you that are watching for your support, not only of the book, but also of the blog. It's such a pleasure to connect with all of you and talk about skating history. And I would love to see more people get involved. So if you love reading the blog, if you love the book, spread the word.
That is absolutely amazing. Okay, what's on your schedule for the rest of the day? Anything fun?
I have lots to do today. So lots of things on the back end. But I am going to have some lunch soon, so that's always fun.
Do you know what? Enjoy your lunch, my friend. It has been wonderful speaking with you. One more time here, I'm going to say goodbye to you now, Ryan. Here's one more time the cover of the book. And for everybody, this has just been great. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.